I'd like to make a land acknowledgement. Hello. Cartoon Crossroads Columbus acknowledges that the ancient ancestors of the Eastern Woodlands tribes, now referred to as the Adena and Hopewell cultures, inhabited the land we know as Ohio. Their descendants included the living nations of the Shawnee, Miami, Wyandotte, Delaware, and Seneca Cayuga. We honor and respect the diverse indigenous peoples connected to this place where we gather. Sponsors, thank you to our sponsors, including the Greater Columbus Arts Council, the Ohio Arts Council, White Castle, Columbus Foundation, UBS, the Japan Foundation, and our other festival sponsors. All of the programs and the expo are free to attend because of White Castle's support. Now, I want to talk to you about who I am, who I have with me, and what we're doing here. Come on in, everybody. Hey, how's it going? Nice to see you. Oh no, we got some new friends. We have some new people coming in here. Come in. Come out. She's gonna bark in her bag. Ponyo Georges is in the bag. She is a 12-year-old Pomeranian Chihuahua mix from Oregon. She was born on the streets of Merced, California, and now she lives in sunny Los Angeles, California. I'm Nicole. I'm going to be your moderator. This panel is described as such. Well-developed environment can help to ground a story. Some artists go beyond grounding a story, in fact, inviting their readers into their homes, their neighborhoods, their cities, and their lives. Directly to my left is Karl Krumpholz, originally from a city on the East Coast. Karl Christian Krumpholz's work has appeared in many different formats, publications, and even animated in a documentary. He's the author of several comic series set in the city, including In the City, The Lighthouse in the City, It's Ula, 30 Miles of Crazy, and Queen City. Please welcome Karl Krumpholz. Caroline Cash is a cartoonist from the South. Her work has appeared in Vice, The Nib, and The Chicago Reader. She's currently working on her Ignatz Award-winning comic series, PeePee-PooPoo, with Silver Sprocket, as well as an untitled graphic novel for Drawn and Quarterly. Please welcome Caroline Cash. To my furthest left, MS Harkness is an American cartoonist known for her graphic memoirs Time Under Tension, which just came out with Fantagraphics, Desperate Pleasures from Uncivilized, and Tinderella from Kilgore Books, and various self-published mini-comics. Please welcome MS Harkness. All right, I am dragging my microphone over so I can go towards the slideshow. Everyone, when it is your time to talk, please talk directly into the microphone in case we are recording so that people can hear it anywhere, and especially our friends who are hard of hearing, who need a little extra bump. I'm going to start by going through your slides. I'm going to start with you, Karl. I'm going to show you some of the slides, and then I would like for you to tell us, you can stop me as we go and tell me why you chose the ones that are here and just what's happening in there.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be like a reading. It can be like, here's why I thought this would be good for this topic. Okay,
all these slides are from my newest book called In the City, which is about the idea of wandering a city and the various people you meet and the strange things that you notice if you're just paying attention. So what I was doing is, like a lot of comics, go panel, and this is an example of where I wanted to kind of go, you turn the page and you just go big screen, and you have this big layout of the city that you're wandering in. So in this story is like at the end of the night, my wife and I, Kelly, are just basically wandering home through our neighborhood. Another one of those panels that I wanted to do was like going a big screen and basically introducing this, the city as a character. This is where we all live, and I wanted people to get a feel of city life, even though this city is not based on any specific city, but it's a blend of several cities that I've lived in.
Which cities?
Well, Denver, where I live now. I grew up in Philadelphia, New York. I lived in Boston for a long time. So the whole story is a blending of these cities and things that have happened.
You're getting a little there.
This is, again, the very end of the night where this happened in Boston, where we're wandering home, and you just kind of feel, you hear those weird things like a party going on and people laughing in the distance, and it just kind of gives a feeling of the city, like it's either laughing at you or laughing with you. And I kind of wanted that quiet moment at the end of the book. Again, wandering the city by transit, and just kind of feeling the quiet of the moment as you transverse the city.
Well done.
Again, lastly, I think this is last what I gave you. Again, wandering the city and just feeling it be above you and around you, like you're inside the city, and just feeling the peacefulness of it, even though you also know that there's a weird, crazy thing that's about to happen just out of range.
Thank you. Caroline. Oh, wait. Is that one more?
Yes, the last one. That's the very beginning where basically I state basically the mission objective of the book, which is it's named after a song from the Jam, where in the city there's 1,000 faces all shining bright.
Thank you. Love that smoke. Okay. Caroline, can you walk me through some of these slides and tell me why you chose them for this panel?
Explain yourself.
Explain yourself.
Okay. Let me pull this mic up.
Perfect.
Great. Well, I was thinking a lot about the city. All of the comics I've made so far are based in Chicago because I lived in Chicago for 9 years. I just moved to Philadelphia, so it might change, but they're all based in locations in Chicago or around Chicago or inspired by Chicago for the most part. Unless I'm on vacation and I make a comic on vacation, I guess. And this is a scene in a bar in Chicago called Rainbow Club of two girls complaining at a bar, classic. And I always think of the city when I think of this space because it's one of my favorite places in Chicago. So that's kind of why I chose it. I don't know.
Let's find some more. What an embarrassment of riches we have here with all these slides.
This I included because I thought it was a good one-panel gag, and I thought that, there's so many situations where you're outside talking on either in a stoop or in an alley with people, and yeah. This is at another Chicago spot called Danny's that closed during the pandemic, but kind of the feeling of being surrounded by all of these different people on the dance floor and what that experience is like.
I think, here we go.
This is when you're in O'Hare, and then you're on the train and you're vaping the whole time. This is the first page to the Rainbow comic called One Beer. So
I think, do I have any more slides from you that I'm missing?
I don't know.
Wonderful.
I think I sent some more, but that's okay if you don't.
Oh, no. Hold on. We'll get there. Or not.
It's very possible.
Oh, God. It's an HP. Oh, God. I'm sorry. Now I'm completely out of my depths. Oh, yes. Okay, great. Here comes Craig. It's Otto. Wonderful. Thank you. Bye. See you later. I'm glad that you could relax here, Craig, and just watch the panel. Because I had it all under control. Thank you.
Oh, this one is a rare situation of a comic not in Chicago. It's set in Charleston at the Town Center Shopping Center, which is the outdoor mall that my friends really liked when we were 13. And it's a comic about going to Victoria's Secret. So
For boobs.
For boobs. Yeah, exactly. So, you know when you're 13 and you're gay and your friends want to go to Victoria's Secret and it's really complicated for you. This is from my newest comic.
Invader Zim shirt.
Yeah, the Invader Zim shirt is one that I had for sure, and I looked it up so I could draw it exactly right. I know you had Invader Zim shirts as well as a child, so
In my panels.
in your panels too, yeah. So
Site specific.
that is totally.
That might be the last one of yours we have.
Sounds good.
If you have more, just describe them to us in incredible detail.
Totally.
All right. MS Harkness, can you talk us through your panels?
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
Craig picked these up. So Craig picked these out because they're all from my new book. And for the most part, as far as like terrain I'm covering, it's like Pittsburgh in this bit. Where who's from Pittsburgh or driven into it? So you know when you drive through the Fort Pitt Tunnel and it opens up and it's like the most majestic, amazing thing. I didn't quite capture it, but this is like all I could do at the time in terms of trying to get that out. The rest of these pages I think are mostly just from Minneapolis. So I think mostly like what I'm trying to do, I'll just talk generally and you can just scroll aimlessly through these. We all do memoir comics in some way or another. Caroline does less memoir because she's the voice of regeneration, so she has to be more like open and generalized than me and Carl. But like when I'm making memoir comics, I'm trying to just like obviously number one place myself back into that place, Doi. But it's also like an act of seeing and kind of like trying to be present in the moment to be like, you know, okay, meditate on where I actually was. So instead of like just trying to draw shit from like Google Maps, it's a little bit more of like a kind of, I don't know, like psychological investigation of like, what are you actually seeing on a daily basis when you're not like walking and texting at the same time? And trying to think about just like how these places are different and like giving them the life that they have. I don't know if I have any panels where I'm like having Pittsburgh where I'm trying to draw like Squirrel Hill at like this kind of like slant where all the row houses are like diagonal. But this, that United Crushers place, is like a weird condemned like, industrial blight building in Minneapolis. It was just this big weird factory. I don't know what the fuck it made. It's like abandoned now. So like, urban explorers go in there and get like asbestos. But somebody just there's like the street art, they wrote United Crushers on it in this big crazy font. You can look it up. And it's kind of like no one knows why. It's just there. So it's this cool thing in Minneapolis. I really do enjoy when I make things so specifically that like I have people who run up to me and go like, my apartment is this building you drew. Like, it's wholesome and cool. And just the way that I don't get to like walk this commute anymore. I don't live there anymore. But I get to go there and drawing and like in the way that, everyone would want to complain and be like, I don't want to draw environments, backgrounds are lame or whatever. It's like, what if it actually was like a place that you could go and return to, as opposed to just a drawing. So I think about all my environments that way, as far as like, you know, like the time of year too, being like I get to bike down this place next to a lake that I really like used to go to a lot. So that's cool. This is a place. I don't know. I don't know what else was picked. I just saw it really quickly flashing by. So it's not interesting for me to just list where they're at geographically. It's just like a dumb fact. You're like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, those buildings sure do have ivy on them and leaves. They sure are cool.
And you drew it.
I drew it. This is like less specific, but it looks really cool when you project it onto a screen. So. This I had to invent a lot because it's me talking about like family members that I have actually never met and just have like heard about. So I had to kind of like figure out. Like I've been to Denver a handful of times, but you know, like that's kind of like almost like a postcard of like what the city could be, in the way of like I would imagine this being a very generalized suburban home that could be in Michigan, but could kind of be anywhere. And what I'm doing here is obviously just like trying to think about like what looks the best on the page, like what's the most visually interesting. So that's kind of like the leading the way for that. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Craig. Everyone, Craig Campbell.
Yay, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. That's so interesting that you were talking about the idea of visiting, like drawing, spending time, or reading one of your comics as visiting that place again, because I think about that with character, like human characters, dog characters. It's a way of spending time with them, and then revisiting it that way. Do all of you think of your cities as characters before we begin?
I would say definitely yes.
And you feel like the person for whom this panel was born for. As I was reading your work, I was like, this is it's like a city study as a character study.
Yeah, I deliberately didn't want to have a specific city. I just wanted to kind of document city life. Because I've always been kind of like, I did a book called Queen City, which is all about Denver, Colorado. And what if you don't care about Denver, Colorado? Like, if I'm here in Columbus, why would you care about Denver, Colorado? So I kind of wanted to do more of this is what city life is, rather than somewhere specific. Yeah.
And for you, city also seems way more intertwined with humans than like MS, like a lot of yours are like just the cityscape itself. Whereas Karl's is just like bumping full of the people in there, and that's making up the atmosphere. Like yours is like the trees, the houses, the buildings, the streets that you went on.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Great. Thank you. Carolyn, do you think of your city as a character in your comics?
Sometimes, maybe not a character, but I do think of the setting as being really important, and it kind of informs what the characters are doing, similar to how a character would inform them as well, I definitely think there are pieces of comics and movies and TV shows and stuff that integrate the city as a character a little bit more than I do, to the point where it's like, yeah, obviously New York is like the star of Sex and the City, but I don't know. It's definitely a major player, I suppose, in my work. But I got to think about it. Yeah.
What about you?
I feel like when we're like the city's a character, it's like a thing that we read in like screenplay like how-to things, right? Where it's like doy.
Yeah.
Like if you're not thinking about it, then I mean it's probably just like your environment's incidental and boring in the way that it's more so based on what you can draw as opposed to like what your story is. And it just reveals like a certain like inactivity of the brain if you're not like actually showing like where things are and like how those things inform. And it just, I don't know, we all do memoir, so we have to like think about our lives and like how those places inform them. So I don't know, I always feel like I'm trying to probably do more than I'm able to do physically, and I have to like commit to it and then figure it out later. To actually like put forth what I think this place is. And that's what I was saying like with the Pittsburgh one. I'm like, I don't know if I really did it. This is on my favorite page of my book. It looks a little clinical because it's so zoomed out. But yeah, whatever, I tried it. So
Well, I was thinking, when I was thinking about this panel and how to go about it, I was like, God, I hate drawing backgrounds. I hate drawing. I was like, no, I ever think of my city as a character. But then when I actually started thinking about Portland, Oregon and how it feels in my books, I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. And then I was thinking about like a time where I drew myself biking past a building that was a brick building, and I drew every brick. And my girlfriend at the time was like, you don't have to draw every brick. Like, we didn't actually need to see all that. But it's just satisfying. There's something about it when you actually go into the detail and draw that stuff that you step away and you're like, oh my God, yes, this is so satisfying.
I,
Go ahead.
It does feel good to draw bricks. You know? It's like a really satisfying pattern to have in a comic, I think.
oh no, I was going to say, like, you know, when I did this book that's set in the city, like, you know, there's only specific scenes that are deliberately, this is a specific building that this happens in. There's a scene about this old historic bar in Denver where Bob Dylan used to play. So I was like, I want it to be in that scene. But what I was going to say was, I find it interesting, like with my Queen City book, where I deliberately had to draw Denver, Colorado, and just drawing a building. And yes, it can at times seem sterile, and you got to try to figure a way to do a personality onto the building, and just to say something about it rather than having it seem cold and clinical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also noticed in all of your work that you're all, for the most part, you're all engaging with the city either on foot or on bicycle, or like in your book, you have the cabbie or like the Uber driver take the scenic route so that you can see things better. So all of you are very observant
I
of
don't
your.
own a car, so.
You don't own a car?
I don't either.
I do.
Not to brag, but I do have a car.
I'm so jealous.
Well, you see a lot more when you're going slow and you're actually getting to observe all those little details that end up in each of your work, whether it's like the people outside of the bar or the architecture itself. That's a statement I wanted to say.
I'd also say I think we're all three cartoonists who do other things other than cartoon all the time. Like we have lives.
Like what?
I drink in bars.
Drinking in bars?
Yep.
Caroline does stuff. Caroline
I do stuff.
Caroline goes out.
I do.
I enjoy walking in nature. I enjoy going outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like again, it's like in the way that we're all seeing things, and it's like not necessarily like also like interact with the world. We're not just like our bodies aren't just like instruments to carry our head from place to place.
Yeah.
We have like other activities and recreation. So
Interests, maybe?
Golf.
Yeah, golf. Oh, yeah, we gotta
Playing
go
golf.
golf.
Yeah, we play golf.
Do you think of each portrait of a city in your work as like a time capsule?
I would say definitely yes.
Yeah.
And what time are you trying to grasp in that?
I know one of the reasons I started my one book was to document the city because it was disappearing. You know, it's an old historic place is getting knocked down and replaced by, you know, a soulless apartment building. So I kind of wanted to document what the city looked like at the beginning of the 21st century. So maybe, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. In the future, like, you know, someone can look back at this book and going, oh, that's what used to be on that corner.
I typically, unless, for example, like the Victoria's Secret comic, which is about being 13 in Victoria's Secret, like usually the settings of my comics, they're all meant to represent the exact year that I'm making the comic in, because that way, whenever I go back into it, it feels like how it felt when I was the age I was when I made it. You know, like most of the time, the characters who I work with are my age or around my age of whenever I make it. And that way, I don't know, it's like my first book, Girl in the World, came out in 2019, and I made it right when I graduated from college, and I worked on it like my senior year and stuff. And now when I look back in it, I just like think about what we were up to when we were 22, 23, and like what Chicago looked like then, and kind of like the feeling that I had running around Chicago back then versus the feeling running around it now, you know? And I'm working on a longer narrative right now that is also set in Chicago, and it's like a bit older, you know, it's like the characters are older. The places that they're going to exist now that didn't exist 3 years ago. And yeah, so it's like a time capsule, I guess, for me. of whatever time it was when I make it. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just trying to similarly capture whatever that was. I think that with both of us making work about our 20s, it's sort of like the newness of a new environment of being like off leash away from your parents at a certain amount of time. So like that being like so much brighter and more like vivid than like, I don't know, other times in our lives where, you know, like bitty children, being an adult. But yeah, I mean, I think all of the places we're living in maybe have like the similar problems as far as like being gentrified or changed or otherwise like the sort of like the old kind of being thrown out, as historical and amazing as it might be. But like when I express and show neighborhoods, I mean, that's just like, without putting any judgment on like shitty, horribly constructed apartment complexes, I mean, like that is very much a place that you can go where, you know, it's just a fucking pinball bar, vomit all over the ground, pedal pub. Like, yeah, like you can immediately think of all the things that make that area what it is. I relish the opportunity to draw dumb places like that as well. That seem sort of impersonal, but you throw a hockey jersey on a guy and then it's all of a sudden it's one place. So.
Do all of you use Google Maps or your memories or what?
I use Google Maps.
You use Google Maps?
Yeah. Just to kind of like, okay, what did this corner look like? And even sometimes when I'm drawing buildings to help with the angles, I mean, you just kind of swerve around Google Maps to get the right place. Yeah.
I take photos on my phone a lot when I'm out walking places and when I'm just going places. If I think of a scene that I want to have in a certain area or like near a certain building, I'll just like take photos on my phone and then use that or do it from memory. And every once in a while, I'll use Google Maps to make sure, like I did a strip recently where like someone's like walking down this street in Chicago called Milwaukee Avenue where there's these amazing bars. And it's really gross. And I just wanted to get like the order you would pass by them correctly. So I double checked that on Google Maps. So I don't know. That's helpful.
Yeah, I use that. But even that's like a head trip sometimes because like I'll look stuff up in Minneapolis pre-2020. It is very different now. If you can think about what happened there, where all the buildings burned down. So you'll be like, oh, I'll go back and like, you know, just like try and remember exactly what this intersection was at this light. And it's like people smiling and walking their dogs and going into businesses that don't exist anymore. So that's weird. But I think ultimately like that's kind of like what I want my comics to feel like sometimes too, where it's like before it all went wrong, like where were we, you know? So I'll like start with Google Maps, but then I'll try to like, you know, do a really rough drawing from there and then like turn it off and then be like, use your memory, bitch, figure it out. That way you got to actually like meditate on it and make it not feel like I'm over relying on it. Cause I will like borderline trace it if I get too like attached to the reference image. So.
Yeah. Do each of you also have that kind of trick where you're like, okay, how do I make this look less sterile? How do I make this look less like a copy? Or is it just naturally happen because it's organically going like through your brain in your hands?
I mean, I think the one way I try to make it less sterile is just not use a ruler, just do it freehand. Mm-hmm. Kind of gives it a feeling, a flow that I like, I prefer, yeah. And I don't draw every brick.
But it feels so good.
It's like scratching that compulsive cartoonist itch where you're like, okay, you could do the cartoonist thing, which is like the shorthand. We understand it's a brick building, or you could be like, I'm going to sit here and draw every single brick, and then you just nod
I do the
off
shorthand, yeah.
I have a really technical question too, which is how do all of you feel about line weights of your characters versus the city? Like, is your character a stronger line weight than the city? Do you make them the same line weight? Like, what do you choose to spotlight using your spot blacks, using your line weights, etc.?
Heaviest line weight is whatever's closest to the frame. for me. So it's, if the character is in front of something, then they're going to have a bigger line weight. But if it's like there's a wall in front of them, then the wall is going to,
Co-signed.
I mostly use the same line weight for the people in the building, but what I use to differentiate is usually the color. Yeah, I use colors in the buildings different than with the people.
Because I'll use like I'll use like a technical pen for things that are not organic. So like a building or whatever, and then I'll use a brush pen for a tree or a dog or a person. And that's how I can differentiate. The last thing I want to know before I get some more questions from the audience are, do you have an idea of what is your position in the city or with the city? And I think of this because, Karl, in yours, I was trying to figure out if you were like, there's so many people in your comic in the city that make up the city. And I was like, is your character like excited by them or afraid of them or like bothered by them, or are you in love with them? Like, what is your position in the city?
In that comic, I made a deliberate choice. If you look at the comic, I never talk.
Yeah.
I'm basically, my role is documenting and just observing everything. Because, it stemmed from the fact that, I would walk around the city with my wife and, she'd be in her own little world and I'd be kind of like, did you just notice that naked guy in the alley back there? And that's how basically the story came around, is just me just being observing around me and just recording everything. And it basically, the series of comics that I've been doing going back to 30 Miles of Crazy, which I did, which was working on before all the lockdowns and stuff like that, was basically documenting bar stories and city stories, and this just seemed like the direction my career was going in.
Do either of you have strong ideas about like what your position is with the city?
My strong position is that I'm a girl on the bus. And that's how it feels, It's like I'm always trying to go somewhere. I'm always waiting for the public transit. So
I love wherever I'm living. I immediately just like commit to a sort of tribalism level of like screaming, passionate appreciation. I moved here and got really into college football and like everything that goes on here because I was just like committed to the bit. But no, I think as much as like my work can totally be me like the protagonist of this story, like expressing frustration and whatever, like where I'm at, I'm always trying to like think about counterbalancing that with the fact that like being young is fun. And like doing shit is cool. And like, however, flaky and dumb and annoying you are when you're like 25, you have all the life and energy and the juice and the mana. And like, I want to represent the fun of it. So, and it's usually going out and chilling in bars and hanging out with dumb people in cool places. So
I lied. I have one more question. The last question I want to ask you is, okay, you have so much limited real estate in a comic. To each of you, what are the things you think of first when you think of a city scene or you think of portraying your city? Like for me, I think about
garbage. Garbage.
I think about bridges in Portland and a million trees. Like they just have to be in there.
I think with a lot of it's the weird chimneys with the smoke and water towers. I love drawing water towers, even though most of the water towers I've ever seen were in New York City, and like all the other cities, there was maybe one or two, but I just like every time I draw, just dot the landscape with water towers.
I usually think about like the people who would be either like on the street or in the club or at the ice cream stand that like I would think of when I'm thinking of the location. Like, who would you pass by? What would they be talking about? Britney Spears? Would they be throwing something away? Would they be puking? Maybe, Yeah. So that's kind of the first thing I think about.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you were like, I have to talk about this thing on this panel? I must. Karl, I feel like you could talk about Cydia's character for your whole life.
That's what I mean, that's what it really,
That's what you were doing.
yeah, that's what I'm doing. I mean, it's what really interests me. And as I said, it's not just, I don't want to document one city, I just want to document city life.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I like the idea of like when I draw stuff, I would throw something in there that is specific to one city. So if someone in Denver's reading it, they're like, oh, that's the satire. Or someone in Boston, oh, that's Plowing Stars in the background and that beautiful bottled liquor sign. And just kind of blend it all together.
I wish your panels were up. That way we could see something like we're all very Metropolitan. You know what I mean? Like we need a Ted Kaczynski like tree guy on this panel too. You know,
Oh yeah.
tree
Well,
appreciator.
I live in like a weird mountain neighborhood now that's just like very Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah.
So,
I was just in Portland like a month ago, so I think I know.
oh, well, no, I moved to a different one outside of LA.
Oh,
I already
oh,
lived
okay.
in that one. I've already had my shack, my manifesto shack in multiple places. I want to know, are there people here that have questions? I want to open it up to the audience. Yes. And I'll repeat the questions to the mic for the recording.
What's up, Rachel?
Hi, Marina.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, like, is there any discomfort writing about the real people in your life, especially when you know that they probably will see it at some point?
Is there any discomfort writing about the real people in your life, especially when you think about them maybe seeing it at some point?
Sometimes, yeah. I did a book with Tinto Press a while back that called Introduction to Alcohol, which was all about my family. And a lot of my family was not happy with it. And I've been asked to do a sequel to it, and I was basically told, yeah, not until we're dead. So, yeah. But most times when I do something specific, like based on a specific person, usually if they tell me a story, I'd ask them, can I use this? And if they want to be in it. A lot of times when the situation, I draw the person completely different than who it actually looks like.
I fictionalize a lot in my work, even the stuff that's like memoir or like autobio adjacent. Like, so for the most part, no one's
Because you're the voice of a generation.
sure. And that I think has really saved me. I have some like rules. It's like if something fucked up happens and I'm like, okay, I feel a certain way about that, so I'm gonna put it in a comic. Like I think it would work narratively. My comics are about me, blah blah blah. I wait a minute. You know, it's like if something happens, I'll wait 2 years before I even, twist it and bend it into whatever it's gonna be in my comic, to a point where people usually no one's recognized anything. And I hope it stays that way. But I also, when I do have friends in comics or jokes or something that happened to them, like two friends of mine accidentally hooked up with roommates without realizing it, and then they both woke up in the apartment the next morning, and I'm absolutely putting that in a comic because it's so funny. And they're both like, yeah, LOL, go for it. So like when it's stuff like that, I usually am just like, that's really funny. Can I put some iteration of that in my little comic book? And it goes pretty good. I don't know. I try and be mindful for the people in my life and what I think is not my business to write about. Yeah,
People make a mess. Yeah, it happens. You can make people look different, and that helps. You can cut things out, and they'll still be mad and not talk to you. You are an artist at the end of the day, so, life is long. Maybe they won't talk to you for 5 years, and then they'll get over it. Depends on what you want to put up with. It's like, how much trouble do you want to make for yourself? So...
My mom gave me a 1-star Amazon review. And I'm still making my work, because you just have to make your work. That's my job, isn't to make her happy, it's to make my work. We have more questions? Yeah.
So with this style, you are obviously obviously documenting your own lives, are you inspired in the moment? Like, are you like, snapshot, this is something I'm going to create with? Or is it something when you're looking for inspiration, you're looking back at, oh, this vacation had something, or you know what? Like, how do you get your inspiration?
How do you get your inspiration?
I definitely, in the moment, like something might happen or a situation might happen, and I instantly pull out my phone, email myself going, this just happened. And you kind of go back to that when you're working on the script.
For me, it's 50-50. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, I'm having a really crazy night in Fort Lauderdale. Gotta remember this. And then the other times it's like I'm thinking, and I like to make lists. And like I think of like a topic, like, okay, I want to make a scene at someone's apartment. And then like I'll go through and make a list of different times in people's apartments. And then through making the list, there's typically going to be something that jumps out at me that reminds me of something else, and then like a story can come from that, you know? So.
I'm just gonna say same.
Yeah.
Dude.
More questions? Yes.
I'm kind of curious because I feel like there was a mention of tribalism and just being from Chicago, I imagine that's a big part of that. I know. And I'm wondering, just as far as the commitment to where you are, does that change the way that you write about your story, contrast to other locations, especially since it seems like, at least with you two, and possibly in the future you, moving to a new city, kind of like puts you in a new space and reflecting about space that you loved and written about as past setting.
I was going to say, I feel no tribalism to Denver, Colorado. Not at all. This is like the 5th city I've lived in, so I feel no... Sure.
Sorry. Does the way you feel about the city affect how you draw it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your commitment to it, your sense of tribalism around your city, does that affect how you portray it in your comic?
And I was like, I feel no tribe. And I actually think that works for me because I can look at this as an outsider. I mean, a lot of stuff I've done, I was like, okay, this is how I see the city. And thankfully, people have grokked onto it and like what I've been doing. But I really don't like, I'm not like a huge Broncos fan or anything like that.
That's good. You got your ass whooped the other day. Jesus Christ.
I'm actually, you know, I moved to Denver from Boston. I'm still more tribalistic about that place than Denver. But I like, and the Patriots aren't doing that great either. So, but I like being the outsider, kind of looking, observing things rather than going, this is my city. Yeah.
The more I like a place, the longer time I'll spend drawing it, you know, like the more effort I'll put into it, and usually the better it will look. So.
Well, and it clarifies when you move, right? Because like, where you've lived in several different places, Carl, being like the first place you live, you're like, the whole world is like this, and then you leave, and it's like, doy, and it's not. So I think it sharpens your like jeweler's loop as a cartoonist of like getting the exact detail you want for a specific thing. But I have not made comics about being in Ohio yet. I'm working and building it, so it will happen eventually, I'm sure. But no, I mean, and again, you know, and on the whole, I've mostly lived in the Midwest, and there's plenty of Midwestisms, you know, culturally, with our, you know, non-smiling weirdo faces and our affect, as far as, you know, we understand each other, as big parka people. So, yeah.
You got one
What?
from the Arnolds.
Yeah, but that was like a COVID comic. That was like I'm at this specific place. I've not made extensive comics about walking around like Clintonville, you know, or whatever. So
Not yet.
I see a hand back here for a question.
How about your resources or inspiration for your architectural style? Something like Macaulay or a map from an archive, something like that you use to get your style, how you make building, or do you have that skill background?
What are your
Any other.
what are your resources that you bring for your architectural stylings? What do you use?
Resources? I mean, aside from like photographs or inspirations?
Other artists who have drawn cities?
Other artists who
Yeah.
have drawn cities?
Or perhaps archival photos, things like that, have you ever used them?
I've used archival photos. I mean, there's,
Other than Google.
yeah, I've used I remember during the COVID, I had to draw certain buildings that were no longer there, and I had to go to like the Denver Library and the Westward, which is the local paper there, and ask them about old photographs. But if you're asking about an artist, there's this San Francisco watercolor artist called Paul Madonna that did these beautiful landscapes of the buildings of San Francisco. He put out, I think, 1 or 2 books, but I think it was published by City Light Books. And that was one of the things that really I grokked to drawing buildings. Yeah.
I make comics, so I try and look at other cartoonists because, especially when you work in black and white, it's really hard to like look at a color picture and be like, figure it out. So it's always like looking at how other people handle subject matter. And because I'm owning the bit of being from the Midwest, I feel like I kind of like pull from a lot of like Midwestern strip comics from, like American cartooning principle. Because then, like it kind of grounds the fact that I'll change my style up with my characters occasionally. And just kind of keeps it all kind of the same note for then which the type or the tone and the character or whatever can kind of like operate at like various levels of noise. But yeah, I think that really helps because I think, environments are hard. So don't like break your mind trying to stare at a bunch of like things that will never become comics. Like just look at other comics you read and how those artists handle buildings or whatever.
Totally. I feel like my, I guess, architectural inspiration for the most part is for drawing Chicago. I looked at a lot of, Daniel Klaus's 8-Ball. He draws Chicago all the time in it. And I really like that comic series. And, he's upstairs. But,
Up in heaven.
I hope he's having a great day. And I really enjoyed Chris Ware's Building Stories, which is like a comic about a building and everyone who lives in it. And I read a lot of manga, and I like the way that they show like viewpoints in manga, like the viewer, the way like the viewer looks at stuff, and like the way that buildings are kind of laid out. So I feel like that's a huge like panel layout inspiration for laying out like certain scenes within spaces and cities and whatever. Yeah.
It's just about time for us to wrap up. We can have one more question. Can I ask a quickie before you?
Super quick.
MS, how did you figure out how to draw chain link the way you do? Chain link fence is quite hard to draw.
Well, this is where I did print out like actual pictures of fences, and I put them in Photoshop, and then like up the contrast a bunch to see what they look like in different light schemes, and like then like took an average of what all those were to then go over it a bunch. This is in my new book. I have like a scene in it with like an MMA fight, and like MMA fighters fight in a cage like animals. So I by hand did all of that, which is just like, it's like saying you can do a lot of push-ups. Like, it doesn't matter, that I did all of it. Like, everyone who like has a brain was like, wow, you shouldn't have done that. That's bad for your body. Just do this all the time. But I'm like, no, whatever. Yeah, so sometimes if you're trying to really nail down a pattern, I feel like it is nice to have source material and like just work in your sketchbook a lot, drawing shitty chain link fences. So
Yes.
So super fast.
Last question on the clock.
If you got a grant to go anywhere in the world for say 2 months to do a comic, would you stay where you are, or is there a place you'd want to go? And it's all paid.
If you got a grant to go anywhere in the world to draw your comic, would you stay where you are or go
France.
somewhere else?
Paris.
France.
Yeah.
London.
You chose shitty food?
Yep.
Damn.
I like fish and chips.
Everyone
For 2 months?
Everyone in London's such a hater, and everything closes by midnight.
I like London.
French people notoriously non-haters.
They're really nice to you. They're really nice to you if you're a girl.
They didn't like me.
Oh.
I wore a Bengals jersey into the coffee shop. They were like, fuck you.
And plus, I like the dour weather.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I would choose Thailand or Borneo for baby elephants or orangutan jungle school. And then I would figure out the backgrounds later. Because I don't know how it feels right now, so I don't know what's the most important thing. Thank you, everybody, for being on this panel. Thank you, audience.
Are we all...
Thank you for moderating.
Signing now?
Oh, no
You're
problem.
signing? Are you doing the signing?